On
Facebook too. Oh. Oh, right.
Did you, if all those folks are admitted, allowed? Okay, perfect.
Yep. They're all in.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Sorry for the late start. We're a little in rank today. I'm Karen Casal, the Vice President of WasteHub. And we're here at the Finance Committee meeting. Our treasurer unfortunately is unable to make it today, so I'm going to hand it over to our Executive Director, Mike Carroll, to run the meeting.
Good part. Thank you, Karen. First thing on the agenda, first thing is the approval agenda. But if you don't have that's but you know, these are all the same reports we'll go over in the board meeting. So first is current bills payable. There's nothing on there at all. That's standard, and as we move on through this meeting, you'll see that we're looking really well on budget. So it's 31,573, pretty standard stuff. Our marketing has gone up a little bit, but obviously that's due to a very aggressive month of building up to the name launch. So we'll just look to, if nobody has any questions, we'll look to approve those in the board.
We have a question about the legal special services. Can you remind me what the special services are that we're getting there?
Anything outside of the retainer. So the retainer covers the board meetings and the notes. Special services would be when I call on John or something. When I call anybody or something. So it's anything outside of our retainer. Any questions on the payables? Okay. Next is budget reconciliation for our first quarter. Like I said, everything looks really well here. Revenues at 27%. Remember, the electricity is just a pass through, and I will say that we're month to month now, they mirror each other. So January bill is January's expense. So all that got changed when we did a correction this year. So we're looking good on revenue and everything looks on track there. You know, the utilities are the highest, but like I said, that's a pass through, and there's no estimate if we turn things on and turn things off, where that's going to be. Any questions on revenue? Yes. We're gonna be hitting one word.
So I really appreciate it. It's great that the utilities revenues matches the expense. That makes it much easier. So wonderful. I did notice that both on the payables for this month and on the budget here, year to date, we're showing our expense for legal legislative advocacy, but on the revenue, we're not showing the revenue.
You haven't done that this first quarter, you haven't just put the bill quarter.
Okay, so it's sort of,
Yeah.
they don't match up.
Yeah, they don't match up.
One other question.
Yes.
I was just curious, if you could talk a little bit about what other sort of travel and training you've got planned for this year? Like, are you planning on going to some conferences and?
So I was, and it was put in the budget. I was planning on going to Waste Expo, but it was too close to the launch, either this week or next week. Yes, and we had the MRA, but I am looking at a conference in November, which I believe is in Ohio, Pennsylvania for Swan. So I would keep my eye on that one. But we're doing, you know, of course, the MMA, but that's in Bangor, is the MRA. And as when I give you my report, it is a busy time legislation in Augusta. It's keeping us on our toes. Yes, I do. I'm looking at Swan. My plan when I did the budget was Waste Expo.
Mike, have you been billed the insurance for this year, the liability?
Am I what?
The insurance, the general liability,
Yes,
they billed you?
yes. But our liability runs, I believe, that insurance
I
runs
don't think it runs the
until July.
calendar year.
Yeah, I'm always split.
Yeah,
Yes.
right.
That's, so if we
That
look,
number is in line at 4,500. That's what you'd expect to pay in July.
yes, yes,
And that's just, what is that, director's liability and you.
and a small piece for like our property and our office and stuff.
That number change.
I don't think so. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't been close enough to have a conversation or not. So I don't, do you know something?
Is your mic on?
Sorry. Black, yeah, sorry. Don't know. That's 595, is that what you just said?
We're fine, yeah, that's the frequency.
I'll visit this topic after the, or near the end of the meeting, to see where we are.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Next is gonna be fourth quarter wealth management. Investments. I spoke to them briefly. Believe it or not, even everything we're seeing on the news and hearing, but I think a lot of that's happened at the beginning of April into March. Our benchmark is 4.51%, and for first quarter, we're at 5.34%.
Are you budgeting $100,000 for that? Am I reading that right? That's line number 7504 on the budget.
So $100,000 for
Paying ourselves.
paying, that's the payback for the wealth management that we use on the plans item. We've so far paid almost $200,000 back to that.
Okay, but we budgeted as an expense, not as a revenue.
Well, it's a transfer. It's transferring to the tip fee stabilization fund. So it's basically putting money back into the coffers of our members.
Thank you.
And that money currently, so we've accomplished a couple things first quarter. Next quarter, we're looking for, what's the term I'm looking for? I wish I was here, investment. So now we're gonna look at, we put money into a savings account instead of back in here because it was gaining interest. In that, we're looking at, talking to putting out investment, seeing, investment strategies, protocols and all that. So that's what I'll be working on next because we have, and Jordan Gold, he does the investment management. We still have those funds that are not currently involved in it.
Yeah, no, fair and call, right, though, there's a transfer. It's not an expense, and it really shouldn't appear on the expense report. It should appear on the balance sheet as a reduction in one asset account and an increase in another asset account. Okay.
Yeah. So maybe you and I can have.
That's fine.
What at the time.
Yes.
I appreciate though, because I understand what you're trying to do. So highlight the fact that this is part of our plan this year is to be able to have that much extra, be able to transfer into that account.
So how do you do that in budget versus actual?
We open a separate account. That's where these funds go to track that. From the plant side, I track it down set. I create a list of it. Part of it is the. That's how we work there. Yep. That's all I have. Other than that, if there's no questions, then it's gonna go through George.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Well, that's starting in a good place. Yeah, I mean, the asset management letter has become a lot easier with the transfer, first of all, for the sale of 90% of the membership interest to MWS. So, and second of all, with consolidation of many of the other activities in the operating account rather than in the joint venture. So what I'm typically doing is fairly limited. It's looking at the bank statements and accounts and reporting on what they are as at the end of the quarter and maintaining the balance sheet and the statement of change in position going forward. Those are in the packet. It's kind of a quiet quarter, just in terms of accounting. I'm not doing any independent valuation of either the value of the site or the contingent fee receivable from under the purchase agreement when IRR or when MWS reaches the commercial operation date, the full commercial operation date, not just the start of transfer operations, or on the equity in MWS. I'm letting that stay what it's been until we have the next audit or until MWS releases its next audit. So those numbers do not change from quarter to quarter. And so other than that, I think the statement's pretty straightforward. We still have at the end of the quarter, meaning at the end of close of business, March 31st, 431, 957, 952.27 in the D&D account, a bit over $1,099,112.10 in the ICS sweep account. And then the investment account positions were including 212, 265, 63 at Androscoggin Bank, which is 207,500 in face value of CDs and interest in addition to that. And then in the tip fee stabilization account, just over $1 million, 1042, 93778. That's a mix of treasury bills, agency bond funds, and commercial bank CDs, plus some cash. And there are no withdrawals in the quarter. So it was a quiet quarter in terms of activity. I understand there may be transfers into other accounts in second quarter. No particular recommendations other than to continue to consolidate accounts going forward to simplify accounting and I think and reduce banking fees. So that's it. Questions? Happy to take them.
I have a couple questions, George.
Sure.
First, I had a sort of question and comment about our name change.
Yep.
And I don't really know exactly how this works, but will we always sort of refer to the MRC when we're talking about the historical stuff before the name change? Or is at some point that going to sort of fall off?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and I kind of struggled with it. I mean, this one is kind of right in the middle of the transition, so I felt to have the formally. I think going forward, I'll just go to Municipal WasteHub and, just eliminate confusion and just do that. Unless you have a different suggestion.
No, I was just curious. I don't really know how that stuff works. So worked for me the way you did it. I also did want to point out and maybe let you know that I think it's not the Municipal WasteHub. I think it's just Municipal WasteHub.
Yep. Oh yeah, no, I see that.
I know we did refer to MRC as the MRC often as interchangeably, but I think with Municipal WasteHub, I think it's just that.
Yeah.
There's no B.
Okay. Still learning in the transition. We'll make sure that's fixed going forward.
And I had a question about our contingent payment that's due from data.
Yeah.
So when do we expect commercial operations, or what's the definition of commercial operations, if you could remind us?
So it's not operation of the transfer station. I believe it goes to accepting materials and operating the MRF. What I don't know, and I need to look back and refresh, is whether that includes the anaerobic digestion facility as well.
Well, some point we'll want to circle back
Yes.
and remind ourselves what that date is. And then I also wondered too, on page 3, we list as one of our assets this receivable for the contingent payment.
Yep.
And I'm curious because that amount has been changing, and I'm not really understanding why it changes from report to report.
Okay, this is the number actually that this is just adopted from the most recent audit of the MRC joint venture. So this is actually the number that came out of the audit. I'm not doing any changes to this until the next audit. And and then the same is true actually for the value of the ownership position in MWS LLC, which changes from obviously from month to month and quarter to quarter, but MWS LLC hasn't had its audit yet. So we didn't have any information available from them to do it. So I just put it in as what it's been since our last audit and noted it. And if it becomes an issue, then we'll have to look into a way to update that on an ongoing basis.
Okay.
So that's where that comes from. It's a bit of a concern in that MWS, when we talk to Innovative, they prefer to keep their financials confidential. So the question is, what do we show on an MRC balance sheet that might break that confidentiality barrier? And so I think there's always just going to be a lag. And unless we want to explore a different path there, that's what I've been doing.
So I'm just kind of still curious about that contingent payment though. So, like back in October of 2024, we listed the contingent payment receivable as like 1,052,000.
Yep.
And in the next report, it was $1,339,009. And then coincidentally, in this current report, it's $1,330,000 and $9. And I don't know, I just, and I,
Yep.
and I guess the other thing is I sort of thought that maybe like, since it was really based on things that happened, prior to the sale, it would have been more of a fixed amount that like Innovative would have known what their commitment was. As opposed to it growing by $300,000 as a result of the audit, but.
Yeah, and that was the difference between the draft audit and the final audit. So what I can do is, it's probably worth spending a little time on that, and I can make some clarifications and get back to the board at the next meeting on that. That would be helpful.
Just curious about that. It just seemed like it would have been not so changeable over time, but. But yeah, like I said, happy to have $300,000 more than $300,000 less, so
Yeah.
that's all I had.
I had a question regarding confidentiality. And I understand the sensitivity, so I'm not gonna say anything outlandish. But we are a 10% shareholder in a private corporation. As a shareholder, we have the right to know what those numbers are. As a public entity, we have to be very circumspect about how we handle those numbers. And I'm wondering whether or not we can, and this kind of tying into my concern about the absence of symmetry on fiscal years. I don't know what their fiscal year is. I hope it's the same as ours, and that those would align to prevent a lot of confusion on numbers. But the two concerns I'm raising are working out a mechanism where we can share information where their confidentiality is protected and align the fiscal accounting periods so that they work together instead of in opposition.
So I agree. Remember, so we have a staff on the board.
We do.
And then, so we have stakeholders meeting every quarter. And then I asked George to attend that meeting also. So we just had a stakeholders meeting yesterday.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
that information is shared.
With you two folks.
Yeah.
But not with the board.
Right. And also what we've seen is that they are behind in changing some of their audit and internal accounting procedures. They've hired an accounting professional internally to do that for them, but that work is in progress. So information we might have hoped to get yesterday was not received at the meeting because it wasn't ready. So there's a time lag here. I think part of this is the transition. My hope is that as they get into operations, that this will equalize and we'll be able to do better in for future quarters. But I'll bring back the concerns and we'll talk about them at the MWS level.
Is their fiscal year? It is, their calendar year.
Yeah.
I think it's calendar. Yeah.
this is the first time that I put my numbers together, and I basically, you know, I sat down, built numbers prior.
Right, and you know, and from the history, you know, 2023 was a 6-month period of innovative ownership where there was a lot of transition. 2024 was the first full year, but they're not. That it really didn't do much in terms of operation, so that, you know, we're catching up with the transition. We'll try to do a little better next quarter.
I'm so concerned about the immediacy of the information and more concerned about a mechanism, obviously, that works for everybody.
Yep.
I do think we need to think about that.
Yeah. we put that there. One thing I will tell you is, you know, I'm there all the time, it a lot of cash come in. So, I'm not overly concerned at this point.
So I appreciate that. I'm thinking down the road, that's all.
This is kind of small, we always want to be municipal waste, and we'll know what we're talking about, so we're not gonna have that. And beaches.
There was a bill in front of the legislature, and I think it went anywhere, but the concern was executive sessions. And the bill would have made people who participate in executive sessions and allow the information to become public, to be civilly liable and to be susceptible to fines. And we didn't give it a lot of attention, but it raised the issue. So I kind of understand where our partner is concerned. But certainly there's a way of working this through so that at least those of us who are potentially liable ourselves have access to information that's comforting, nothing more.
Mhm.
That makes sense, George?
Yep.
Understood.
Understood.
And wrap it up,
That wraps up the upcoming next finance committee, July 23rd, 2025.
10 a.m.
And look at your calendars.
Well, thank you. We'll take a few minutes break before we enter into the regular quarterly board meeting.
Okay.
Morning, everyone. I'm Karen Cassell, I'm Vice President of Municipal WasteHub. Our President, Aaron Cootery, is on vacation this week, so we'll be running the show. And we'll start off with approval of the agenda. And we have an addition to make to the agenda.
So the agenda you have in front of you is correct. We added an executive session to another executive session, but the one that went out last week in the newsletter to the public.
Okay, so we'll be adding a second executive session that is basically identical in language to the first one that's on there.
Yes.
All right, do we have any opposition to that amongst the board here? Consider that adopted as amended. So our first item on the agenda is to address the name change from Municipal Review Committee to Municipal WasteHub. Such a great change. I hope everybody out there is in alignment with us to this new name and new vision of our future. I think it's been well received so far, and I just think Mike and our design team has done a great job with the name, with the logo, all of the thing. It just really looks very sharp. I'm very excited about it. And we do have I believe it's a resolution or an order that we'll consider today. While we did discuss and vote on the name change at a previous meeting, it was just a slightly different version of it. I think it was just WasteHub period. And now we just want to make it clear that it's Municipal WasteHub is our formal legal name. So we'll have a resolve that basically affirms the corporate name is Municipal WasteHub, and it sort of enables the president to file the appropriate articles of amendment, Secretary of State, formalize it. And it enables the officers to do other notices and record amendments and changes and things like that to other documentation that's necessary to effectuate this change throughout all of our legal documents for organization and whatnot. So I don't think we need to actually read it. Do we need to read it?
If we can read it, add it in your package material, so my suggestion is someone want to make a motion to adopt the resolution and present it that we can actually.
I'll make a motion to adopt the resolution. I'll make a resolution. Forget it, I don't want to do it.
If you just hold it in, then
Okay.
that's fine, and you don't have to hold it anymore.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the resolution as presented.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Great. Excellent.
And if, I think we can probably leave our like projects on, so I'm not getting any feedback, and I know that. Yeah, we need it here.
All right. Next up, we have consideration of the minutes of a regular board meeting from January 22nd, 2025.
Because we don't do minutes in the committee. Right.
Do we have a motion to accept those minutes?
So move.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any comments, corrections on those minutes? All right, seeing none, all in favor? 100% accepted. Yeah. Right. Now we have the treasurer's report, which includes the financial statements, current bills payable, quarter budget reconciliation, and an update on the audit RFP. Our treasurer is Bell on yet?
I'm gonna try to be on it at Thursday,
Okay.
but she asked me to cover it if not.
And she'd be up there with George.
Okay.
She has a different, she would have the same link to the panel, so.
All right, our treasurer is still not available, so we'll have Executive Director Mike Carroll go over the treasurer's.
Well, that's,
You can talk slowly.
yeah, I mean, I don't know, no, I think so.
I'll ask a few questions.
That's okay. I have a question on my report. So the first thing that we should review is the payables for March. The payables are pretty standard, 31,573.31 cents. The most aggressive thing on them is the marketing bill with Design Lab, which, you know, March was a big rollout as we ramped up for the April rollout. So I'm asking the board to approve the March payables. Any questions on the March payables?
Do we have a motion to approve the payables? Right, motion in a second. All in favor?
Next is the reconciliation of first quarter budget for 2025. Really, there's no surprises here either. I mean, it's first quarter. Revenue is in line. It's at 27.54. Remember, the one thing that we do have that fluctuates is the electric bill pass-through. We have mirrored it so it matches month to month now. So January bill is a revenue in January and the same expense is an expense in January. So, you know, that's running over in revenue, but it's also going to run over in expenses. You know, I can't control what gets turned on, gets turned off. But other than that, there's really no surprises in revenue at 27.54 on revenue. Okay. And once again, expenses are all in line. We're at 19.35. We've had a couple of the things that you see that are a little bit higher. Once again, would be the electric bill. But other than that, the only things that are higher than 25%, much higher, is annual payments. So they're done for the year. They've been paid. So everything's pretty much in line there. And there's nothing really crazy going on if we're running over on that. Questions?
Just congratulations.
I'm looking at it like, oh.
It's nice that your percentage of revenues is higher than expected, at about 25%.
Yeah.
And your expenses are lower than expected at below 25%. So,
I mean, we
well
still,
done.
yes, I mean, remember, we did a very aggressive, marketing. And there's still a lot more to come. I mean, the next deep dive that I'll get into in my report is gonna be the website. You're gonna start seeing that probably ramp up quite a bit, that just too much.
I do have a question about the interest earnings, which is already at 51%, 1 quarter into the year, which is great. So we were just conservative in how much we thought we might get in interest income, or?
We were, but I'm counting the interest now from our last meeting that we're earning in the distribution and development account, because that's what we're gonna use towards the scholarship. So we have the funds that we put in the distribution and development account. I think it was, don't quote me on this, it was 70,000 or 78,000. We moved over in last year's budget. That's not scholarship fund, I don't think, that's what we moved over, in case we needed any kind of distribution or development later on in the year. That would be available to us, but that is the interest that running to gain on that account. Between that and our regular operator account for our scholarship that will award. That I plan on talking to you more about in second quarter's meeting.
Basically, you're doing very well, because presumably those interest earnings will likely continue through the year, assuming.
Also. So,
Okay.
yes.
Great.
Any other questions on that? Next we have our, investment, our wealth management with, the first, their one sheet. Our target benchmark, which I was a little surprised too, with everything you're seeing, remember this ends in March, and I think things might change in second quarter if we don't get these markets turned around. But listen, our benchmark is 4.51%, and for the first quarter, we closed at 5.34%. Any other questions? And lastly is, and I skipped this in the finance committee, my apologies. It's just the reconciliation we get on the quarterly finances from our CPA. Remember, we do everything in-house now, for QuickBooks, but as the checks and balances, we mirror things up with them every quarter after this document. So on the balance sheet, you know, I looked that over, but what I really like to see is the P&L exactly matches what our budget matches and what our side's saying. So everything looks good there. It's nice to have those checked out. And I don't know if you've noticed, but that expense has gone down quite a bit by us doing most of our own stuff in-house. Right.
Bell is on now.
Hi, Beth.
I just finished, Belle.
I must have perfect timing then. Thank you, guys.
As the treasurer, do you got anything you'd like to add? I literally just said my last word on the treasurer's report.
No, I think you and I reviewed it. I didn't have any comments or concerns.
So I did have a couple questions.
Okay.
I was hoping you could talk a little bit about the audit RFP. And then I also wondered what the status was or plans were for an RFP for wealth management services within the finance committee meeting. And then I recalled from, I think it was the prior meeting that we had talked about meeting an investment policy or strategy, sort of like to go along with the RFP for wealth management services. So just wondered what the status was of that. Not to say that, no, you've been busy, but I just wondered what the plans are.
No, so for the wealth management part of things, I planned on doing that second quarter. So that's to get strategy and to see what opportunities we have out there for investments. an RFP. I do have templates that I have received from some folks in working with the MMA to get one. It was just the first quarter of launch and everything, it was too much at once. While you mentioned that, I also have a template of scholarship that, Peter from the MMA would. So my second quarter goal is to have wealth management present to you in a scholarship, more or less. So that's the goal there. The audit RFP, so that is part of our executive session. I can discuss that now. The only thing about the executive session is to share, response to that on price wise. I just don't think that, out there should be out there. Response look like, but I will say it was, we didn't get the responses that we wanted. I Googled on the state or looked up on the state, like 34, places that could do an audit, and then I researched each place and I narrowed it down to 9 that did municipalities and nonprofits. So we gave plenty of time, we had a Q&A process, and we just didn't get the responses I think we were looking for. So what came up in this process, and now I'm glad you asked the question when Bell came forward. Bell actually brought it to my attention, is why are we doing a full audit? Then I brought that to George's attention, and then I also brought it to John's attention so that we could research it. And I'm probably gonna let them speak to that more, but a lot of reasons why we did a full audit was, we had those funds from our previous endeavors with her, and then we had some distributions and some payouts, and it was very important at that time. So Bell, why don't you talk about what you learned with your new position, and then I'll have John and George give their opinion on it. And then I have an idea I'd like to present to you after.
So the reason why I asked Mike about this in the first place was because I was asking our office manager slash accountant who it was that we had do our audit, because it seemed like the pricing that was coming in was a little bit higher than we anticipated. And she kind of looked at the RFP that we had done. She said, well, why are you doing a full audit rather than just a review? Because the review gives you some assurances that your books are in order and that you are presenting stuff as truthfully, but that audit could, digs into each piece of paper and tests and does a lot more proofs and takes a lot more time and does a lot more detail. So of course costs a lot more money. And that's the whole reason why I posed the question. BAX is an independent nonprofit, so perhaps the structure is a little bit different than Municipal WasteHub, but I did think it was at least something that we should ask the question about, since it didn't seem like we had intentions to borrow money in the near future, which is often a reason for nonprofits to do that full audit, or they're getting a lot of federal money, or et cetera, et cetera. But at any rate, so that's why I asked the question.
I guess we'll be talking about that further as part of the executive session, or?
Yes,
Okay.
sorry, yes, that's my plan, that is on the, that's,
Okay.
that. And so I asked John to look in this, and John?
Yeah, I can give a brief overview. So Fellows is correct. If you're borrowing money, or you have certain federal grants, either of a certain size or potentially what they have for area, you have, I'll call it a legal mandate, to conduct a full audit. For Maine, for charitable organizations or type of nonprofit organization, there is, for those that are active, I would say, in soliciting donations, there can be an audit requirement there as well, but also an acceptance to that. So MRC, Municipal WasteHub, it doesn't really, in my view, fit that category, not actively out soliciting donations, that's not. Really what we do. So, if you don't have any debt, where you may be required to have an audit, or you have, funding, you know, I did not see any actual legal mandate that you generally have. Now, my perspective is that in the past, if municipalities are required to have audits. So it's probably natural and customary, given the history, that that's been done, as a matter of custom, and maybe that's just what people wanted to do, so you certainly can do that. But in terms of a strict legal requirement to do that, and some of the other things, I didn't see, yes, you must do this as a nonprofit organization, given the situation, the activities, if you will, of municipal waste. We discussed that in the second session in detail.
So something to ponder on while we're getting to executive session is my thoughts on the continue status quo, what we're doing now, as long as it stays the same financially, the vendor, and see if this is a change that we like to make. But like John. That was three things I think you covered. Did you
Yeah.
have everything?
Yeah, you did. Thank you.
George would like to speak.
Oh, George, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Just with regards to the audit, I just thought it might be helpful to have some historical perspective. The MRC did not do audits in the first 9 or 10 years of its existence. It really started doing the audits after the 1998 refinancing of PERC, and after the MRC became a partial owner of a facility that had debt. So it goes back to facility ownership of a facility that had debt on it. And that's when the audit started from, I think, about 2000, 2001, and they've continued. We did feel it was important in 2018, 2019, when the MRC, there were a lot of members who left, and there's a question about what was the entitlement of the departing municipalities to funds that were in the possession of what was then the MRC. The MRC felt it was important to have all those calculations audited and part of an audit process, which the MRC did, and there was no complaint, or the results were accepted. So that was a successful process. Since then, and I've said, and I may say again in a few minutes, the MRC, or what are now the WasteHub operations financially, because it's not the primary owner of the facility, are significantly simpler than they've been. Whether and that's the history. Whether to go to a compilation or review, something the board needs to discuss further. But I just thought it would be helpful to have that particular history as to what sparked having an audit in the first place and why it's been continued for the last number of years.
Thanks, George. All right, anything else on that topic? For now?
So that would wrap up treasurer's report.
Thank you, Mike and Belle. Moving on to our next item on the agenda is the asset management report. We'll hear again from George Aronson.
Yep, and again, as I just said, the assets of the joint venture are much more easily characterized than they've been in prior years. Right now, it's basically the cash in a number of, I think, 4 different accounts: the D&D account, the ICS sweep account, the account at Androscoggin Bank, which includes CDs, accrued interest, and the cash balance, and then the tip fee stabilization account, which also includes investments, fixed income investments, and accrued income. There are 3 items at the bottom that are the actual assets that are not cash or investment assets per se. the value of the Hampton site, which is shown as $5 million in accordance with the most recent audit of the MRC's books, which was concluded through 2023. The next value, there's some questions on this in the Finance Committee, shown as 1.330009, which is the value of a contingent fee receivable under the purchase agreement. And just briefly, if I can, the purchase the price by which Innovative purchased 90% of MWS LLC in June 30th, 2023 was $3 million. Subtracted off that were lien holder payments, which were made at the time, certain amounts due to the town of Hamden, which were made at the time, and then a credit for assuming swap liability, which is a number that's changed over time a little bit. And that's one of the reasons why that gets updated from time to time and after audits. Just to be clear, the contingent payment is something that would be payable to the WasteHub 30 days following the resumption of commercial operation. And that's a situation that's addressed in the membership interest purchase agreement. Without going into a lot of detail, there is a target to achieve that date no later than December 31st, 2025, presuming that MWS has in place by that time all required permits to operate, is accepting a monthly MSW in the amount on an ongoing basis of 1/12 of the delivery commitment, and it's completed a test in accordance with Section 3E, Romanet III of the agreement. So that's the goal, is to have that payment by the end of 2025. It may go into 2026, but that's addressed in those agreements and also in the forbearance agreement. So just to give some context, people had asked a little bit or had asked questions, why has that number changed? There are some adjustments that have been made related to the third, which is the credit for assuming certain liabilities that was made when the sale was made. And then finally, the equity in MWS LLC, the 10% position. At this point, the MRC in prior quarters, the MRC has relied on audits, audit data provided to the MRC's auditor by the MWS LLC auditor. That has not been updated for 2024. Concern was expressed that there needs to be a better method to balance, first of all, the communication in a public forum of what the value is, and yet respect the confidentiality of MWS LLC. I think that's an issue we need to work on a little bit. But for now, we're using the number that's come out of prior audits until we have better information and a better procedure to present that information. So I think that's my update of what's in the AML and trying to respond to questions from the Finance Committee as well. The recommendations are to consider, nothing special, but just to continue the consolidation of the cash accounts and the investment accounts, as was mentioned earlier by the board. Questions?
Super. Thanks, George. Does anybody have any questions for George? So thank you for those explanations of those issues that I brought up at the Finance Committee meeting, George. And I think my confusion about the contingent payment was based on the language in your asset management letter. It seems to be all referential to things that were pre-closing. And so I think that's what threw me off, that there would be anything post-closing that would affect that dollar amount. So I appreciate that clarification.
Yep. I think part of this, and I appreciate, being directed to do the update in part because probably starting at the next quarterly meeting, the WasteHub will need to talk to Innovative about completing some of the obligations that are set forth in the forbearance agreement and the membership interest purchase agreement by the end of the year related to the test, and actually defining how the new commercial operation agreement is actually going to be defined and how the test is conducted, standards, that sort of thing. So we need to go back to that agreement and see where we are and do an update with them.
Love that. Great, and I guess there's really no recommendation, so we can just accept the report and move on.
That's fine. Yeah.
Okay. Our next item is our update for executive director. Mike Farrell.
Thank you, Karen. My report provides an overview of the activities and developments during the first quarter of 2005, covering our operational status, statistics, key incentives, and relevant legislative updates. Tonnage stats. In Q1 2025, our members total municipal solid waste MSW was 19,287 tons, an increase of 809 tons compared to Q1 2024, which was 18,646 tons. Business updates. I'm thrilled to share some remarkable achievements from the recent quarter. While technically occurring in early Q2, these milestones represent the accumulation of extensive Q1 efforts that deserve celebration. After more than 3 decades, the Municipal Review Committee, we successfully transformed to Municipal WasteHub. This renaming efforts reflects our current identity and strategic direction for the future. Our meticulous preparation ensured a flawless transition. Every member was personally contacted before the public announcement. Comprehensive information packages were distributed to equip members with answers to anticipated questions. All branding elements, logos, websites, email signatures were seamlessly implemented just prior to the launch. The response has been overwhelmingly positive, with members expressing enthusiasm about the name change and Municipal WasteHub strategic direction. This transforming represents the culmination of a 10-month strategic incentive that remained confidential until execution. I extend my sincere gratitude to the board, our dedicated members in Design Lab for their exceptional contributions to making this launch successful. We have many exciting developments still ahead. These milestones mark a significant achievement for our organization and positions us well for continued growth. Another milestone took place just a couple of weeks ago when trucks crossed the MWS scale on Monday, April 7th, with Hampton as the host community leading the way as the first to deliver waste to the MWS tipping floor. This represents a pivotal moment for the facility. MWS is currently operating as a transfer station, receiving waste from member municipalities. This interim phase allows the team to ramp up and fine-tune operations. Full front-end operations, including sorting recyclables and marketing those materials, are expected to be fully online by Q4 this year. Once fully operational, the Hampton facility will fully be capable of processing approximately 180,000 tons of mixed waste annually, contributing significantly to Maine's landfill diversion goals. The facility will transform household trash into renewable natural gas and reusable materials. The facility coming back online will help reduce landfill waste and support clean energy and recycling efforts in our region. We sincerely thank our member communities for their continued support and extend our appreciation to Innovative Resource Recovery, IR, the majority owner and operator of MWS facility. Their expertise and significant funding and significant investment has been key to making this success possible. What sets this collaboration apart is our shared mission and vision, which has built strong partnership focused on innovation and results. Thank you, IRR, for your continued commitment and valuable contributions. Municipal WasteHub and MWS submitted a waste diversion grant application to the Maine Department of Environmental Protection in Q1, requesting $58,000 for education and outreach funding. This funding would have supported an educational campaign providing members with materials explaining the MWS process with special emphasis on the anaerobic digestion component. While I regret to share that we didn't receive the grant in this round, our follow-up conversation with DEP officials has been extremely valuable. They provided clear guidance on where our application fell short, giving us a roadmap for improvement. We plan to incorporate their feedback and resubmit during the second funding round this summer. Thanks to their constructive discussions, I feel significantly more informed and confident about our prospects for a successful when we do resubmission. Member and community engagement. Lots has happened in Q1 with member and community engagements. First quarter brought numerous visitors to our facility beyond our regular flurry of contractors. Notable visits included DEP's Karen Canoe, who retired in January, accompanied by Eric Hamlin, environmental specialist, to formally introduce Karen's replacement, Shannon Conti, environmental specialist level 3. City of Bangor officials for our operations. University of Maine Professor Cindy Eisenhower from the Department of Anthropology and Climate Change visited, also took a tour with her students. These tours reflect our team's commitment in transparency, collaboration, and innovation. Hosting municipal leaders and community members allows us to showcase our cutting-edge work and foster meaningful discussion about improving community service. The quarter has also been marked by productive in-person meetings with various stakeholders at their community halls, including Blue Hill, Surrey Solid Waste Committee, Central Penobscot Solid Waste Committee, and the Bassett Borough Select Board meeting. In January, the Maine State Chamber of Commerce held an environmental policy forum event in Howard. Chamber asked me to sit on a panel for enhancing Maine solid waste infrastructure. Sat alongside waste expert Susan Miller with DEP, Simon Tripp with Casella, and David Van Syke from Platte Ferry. Freddie Flaherty was moderator. The event was successful with a room filled with business leaders, policymakers, and environmental advocates. Maine Resource Recovery Association MRRA conference in Camden was last week with just over 100 in attendance. Our new Maine Municipal WasteHub was very well received, with attendees expressing genuine excitement about our recent developments and future plans. We showed off the new name by presenting a new trade show booth along with hats, notebooks, and pens, which I have up there. And to help celebrate and support Earth Day cleanup efforts, we donated gloves sporting our new name and logo to the Folks Trail Day, cleaning up in Bangor, cleaning up the Canuscate Trail, and also to Millinocket Earth Day community cleanup. I'm sure that we'll have posts once these have taken place and put them on our Facebook. Legislative activity. This session has seemed to be very busy in legislative bills that we have been active on, either by testifying or keeping an eye on to see how they start to play out. Bills that we have been paying attention to and following are as follows. LD 231, an act to update solid waste management hierarchy for incineration. LD 235, resolve regarding the operations of future capacity of state-owned landfills. LD 1063, an act required competitive procurement of electricity from generators fueled by municipal solid waste, i.e. incineration. LD 920, the review of to review efficiencies in licensing of solid waste disposal facilities. LD 1065, the reduction in recycling of food waste. LD 1633, promote the recycling and reuse of construction material. And finally, LD 1423, improving recycling by updating the stewardship for packaging. That is my report. Any questions?
Hey, Mike, do you have any of those gloves left?
I have all kinds. So we ordered, it's either 250 or 300 pair, and we've distributed about 75.
Okay, I didn't want to ask somebody if they wanted some without knowing if you had some.
We have all kinds.
Okay,
What is the trash looking like? Or like, is it acceptable items or?
So far, it's good, but I will say, all that's come in is curbside collection. So, except for Hampton, but they monitor their compact. So right now, we're averaging about 75 tons a day. So we'll ramp up again next week. And I will start calling in some of the transfer stations. So, and what I mean by that is curbside collection is usually very clean because they know there's tires not to take, there's an air conditioner not to take. Where we're gonna run into trouble is transfer stations where nobody's looking to throw the air conditioner off, or the TV set or that. So far, so good. We wanted to get, going, and that will start taking it. And yours comes in tomorrow.
Was asking me today about, I did look on our website. Do we have anything different than what's on there for acceptable waste that we get for our residents? Or-
I can print you out something. That is something we're actually working at design. We're working at a nice, calling it a placard. It's kind of gonna have our acceptable waste on the bottom. But we're gonna give, it's one of these outreach and education tools. We're gonna give it to the municipality, to the members. So at the top, they can fill out what meets their needs. If they have a transfer station or curbside collection or that type of thing. It's really neat. So we're working on 3 things for kind of our next, we have a punch list. One is we're working on like stickers or posters that you see, like member of the chamber, member of this. We're working on a catchy slogan that, part of the Municipal WasteHub, organization, member of the Municipal WasteHub that they can put right on their transfer stations and these placards, the do's and don'ts. And then one thing I did mention, that we saw, I just did my update like 6:11 last night. You couldn't tell. So, it's been a crazy couple of weeks between the MRA, the waste coming in the main watch. But, so we've been working on video, and it's actually the first draft is in production right now. So I've met several times with them to see if we can get our point across, and then I've asked Aaron and Karen to come in and look at the all paper, we call it storybook. They're all paper drafts, and basically this is about who we are and what we do. And the kind of do's and don'ts. And so right now, we're at a point where the language was kind of, it was shortened up to where it needs to be, and we'll say scope has been, so they can make a draft production of it. So I'm hoping to show that to the communications committee next. We're trying to get all the legwork out of the way so we can at least get a draft between. So I'm excited about that, and I think that's gonna be. We're really checking all the boxes on a lot of the goals.
Is there anything that we as the member communities can do, like post to our website? I mean, because I have a transfer station page, but anything that we can incorporate to
Yes.
further assist our residents?
Put Tom in the car
Yeah.
and have him go to every transfer station and mirror what you do there. So.
Walk faster.
Yeah, so, no, you guys just be that, right on it. Not at this point. I think when we do the video and have this, so I'm gonna go back on my road trip as of next couple of weeks, maybe focusing on other things and try to visit every member between now and the end of July. Which we will call that, that's kind of what I did last year, and we have quite a few checked off now, and say about 10 or 15. But, yeah, let me sit on that, and I think we'll provide you with material that you can put up and then spread the word. I don't know if any of you paid close to the Facebook page, but it's really starting to get traction.
Yeah, we have more followers.
Well,
Aside
we
from
launched,
that.
when we launched our, followers, yeah, and when we launched our name, we got like 50, 60, I think, you know, thumbs up. Big boost. So,
Yeah, I think what Becky was talking about and what you were mentioning with regard to the video, to have materials that go along in parallel with that, that communities can put on their websites, that they can post to their Facebook pages that are more talking about the facility, sort of like announcing it again and explaining what it does in terms of recycling. How does it recycle? So people understand what the plant does. You know, because people just, they don't know what it does, you know.
so every week we have a scheduled meeting. Sit down, we'll punch list. I review all the social media posts that first month, but that is what we did. So now that the, you know, because the waste hub will first quarter, just the design alone, group, everything else. So now that's a big piece out. The next big thing would be the Facebook, I mean, the website. That's just a big undertaking. Also, you just mentioned the education materials.
Can you talk a little bit about the website and what the timeline is on that? Yeah, have a communications committee that can help you.
I know, I'm hoping that we can have it. I mean, I like to see it wrapped up by third quarter. I like all different, I mean, that's the first thing on the list next. Now that we have the design done and the stuff, you know, like all the posts and everything else, that's at the top of the list now. That's what they're looking for. And I will rely on committee, because what's gonna be take time is the content. That's not something, I mean, they'll give us the bones, but we're gonna really need it.
Well, it has changed to Municipal WasteHub, I've just on it.
Yeah.
And comes up and says,
And
this is our new name, whatever, so.
they did a great job.
Yeah.
Like all that happened at 11 o'clock in the morning, and then the press release went out, like something like that. It was within, and we thank you to Bell. Bell came over. Her and I were in my office till like 7, 8 o'clock and trying to get our signature line changed and make sure that those all collaborated. Then I wasn't emailing anybody at first, the next one itself, it went really well. Like I could not have asked for better, I think. And what amazed me is it never got out. I mean, you know how many times we said waste hub or hinted to it and no, you know, I mean, right to the tail end of the launch, so. Good stuff.
All right. Any, you have got anything else?
Well, does anybody else have any questions for me? So before I turn it over to Innovative, I want to take a moment in honor of today. Today, April 23rd, is Administrative Professionals Day. So I'd like to recognize our own Barbara from Municipal WasteHub, our bookkeeper, for all her hard work and efforts. So thank you, Barbara.
Thank you, Barbara. You.
Now,
Great, thank you, Mike.
Mike, there's just what, it's not a question, it's just a statement.
Next, we have our folks from Innovative,
She'll do public comment and you can read that at public.
in the first quarter, 7. Thank you for your time.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
you have to press it down, Kevin, just for a second. Perfect. Now just get a little bit closer to you if you don't mind.
Can you hear me okay now?
Yep.
Okay. So we've got a few updates, which is great. I'll just try and tick through them. Most of these are confirmatory of what you guys heard last quarter. But happy to answer any questions after I go through them. So fire over that we spoke about for the last several quarters is online. So we have an active fire suppression system there in addition to just your traditional, fire protection system. We have brought in the equipment we need to run the front end of the facility. And we've hired the people to operate those. So that's allowed us to actually start taking in waste and kind of the first step of ramping up the facility. So that's exciting. As Mike mentioned, we're up to about 75 pounds a day, waste coming in, which we're gonna use to evaluate what's coming in, make sure it's acceptable for the MRF. Over the next, few months, but that's exciting because it's now, we're now good stuff. We have officially, filed our processing license application with the DEP. So that's under review as we speak. We've reviewed it with them several times in a less official capacity, so we don't expect any objections or surprises. But, we'll wait, but we feel pretty good about that. And they're good.
For the people online, can we just? So can we just clarify, we have a license,
Correct, I'm sorry, the
Yeah.
amendment to our.
the amendment to, yes. So in a nutshell, the way our license works is it had, I don't want to say issues, what words I'm looking for.
Conditions.
Conditions. And so what we've done now is we've fulfilled some of those conditions. So that we can work towards starting MRF. And so that's what they're looking at now is we're putting in place, from originally when this all happened. Here's your license, but some of the things we didn't know how we were gonna do. And so for the front end part, the MRF part, we have fulfilled those, we filled in those blanks on those conditions and put it in. So I just don't want people that we don't have, because I know that's confusing, that we have a processing license.
But is it fair to say that we really can't start the work until that process is completed?
Correct.
Is there an estimated time?
So we still expect to be able to start the month in the fourth quarter of this year. We're obviously working with the TEP to do it as quickly as possible. And they've been very supportive. I want to thank the TEP for being as responsive as they have been. But the current expectation is planned that we'll be operating there. And so, that was gonna be my last update. Other than that, the only other thing I would mention in terms of notable activity is where we are allowed to, we have started actually making some modifications to the facility, removing some of the old equipment. That'll allow us to move more quickly as we bring in the new pieces, to basically implement the improvements that we're making up for the laptop.
Way too honest. There's been cranes, been contractors, there's tons of steel moving. It's nice. So. There's the components that aren't gonna be used that are coming out or refigured, getting ready for the new components that are coming in.
Sorry. Is there any consideration being given to future modernization of the operation with robots?
Yeah, the short answer is yes. We've spoken with several vendors about using robots. We think initially we want to use pickers to see what's in the stream, because that's going to allow us to put them in the right places and put the right machines. They're different, depending on what the materials are you're trying to pull out. You may use a different system. But the short answer is, again, we've actually spoken with 3 or 4 vendors who have slightly different solutions. I expect we will do that. And even the base facility right now has a number of optical sorters, which you can think of as, they're not robots, but they serve the same function. They just inject with air arms. There is quite a bit of automation in the system today.
I think I've heard discussions. I think one of the best places to start would be actually on the residual school. I think one fine pick, that'd be a great place for a robot or two.
The last chance line.
The last chance line. I think as discussions and stuff with it, that is possible to happen. So I think that'd be a good stuff. I like that the last chance line, those are not great. So.
Any questions for Kevin? I had a question that I may have asked it last time, but can you tell us if you all, what you all are thinking of about the crazy stuff happening out in the economy and with the markets and with changes happening in DC? I'm thinking about renewable energy credits. I know that's an important component of the financial analysis of the plans.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we are absolutely following it. I think The unfortunate answer is no one has a perfect crystal ball for what it all means. The good news is from what we can tell today. So part of on the renewable natural gas that runs through the fuel standard, which has not been impacted to date. There's some noise in the pricing, but it's still, that program still exists. And our understanding is you have to get Congress involved for that to change. And the obligation targets, which impact the pricing, were set for 3 years in advance. And so nothing has changed on that as of today. And then on the actual capital side of things, really the programs we were going after were tax credits. And so again, from what we've seen today, there's been nothing that actually impacts those. It's funding. And so nothing that we had contemplated in our base plan was actual solid federal dollars to us. It was a tax credit. So we have not seen anything that shuts us down today. It moves day to day, candidly, and I'm not going to say it hasn't made things more challenging. But I don't, we're constantly running numbers or finding things, but we haven't seen anything that I would call a deal killer. Look, I'd love to tell you I give you a perfect answer, but
But it's bad, right?
it's that crystal ball is very tough to
Can you talk a little bit about hiring? Are you guys sort of like staffed up to where you need to be for the foreseeable future, and then we'll do another staffing increase closer towards before?
Yes, look, there are a couple positions we may bring in on the general facility side of things. But in terms of day-to-day operations, we're all stepped up. We have 2 equipment operators, we have scale house attendant, in addition to the folks that you guys have already met and heard about. And so, we think we're kind of good for where we are. I expect we'll have a couple heads join the organization over the next few months. But we can operate right now, and then obviously as we get closer, we have a much bigger hiring effort. That's a bigger operation.
Thank you very much for continuing to be amazed with all the work that you guys are doing, and we're super excited that this is the year. So. All right, so just a reminder to folks that our next quarterly board meeting is scheduled for July 23rd. And
remember, we've changed all the times on it. So finances moved up to 10 o'clock, board meeting 10:30. And for the meeting moving forward, we will have lunch come in. So we have lunch showing up here today at 11.
we do have opportunity for public comment. If anybody is participating that would like to say anything or have questions.
We have one just
Thank
comment.
you very much for that comment, Derek. We'll give folks another minute in case they would like to raise their hand or put a comment in the chat or Q&A or a question. We're really looking forward to, ramping up the outreach and education and Mike's visits to places to really get the word out and get people re-engaged with what's happening with Municipal WasteHub and with the plant. So we're really excited to have great things to talk about and to get our members reinvigorated to reduce, reuse, and recycle, right? Old saying, but it's great. It's
All for our week then. Let's revise it. Yeah.
But we're reusing it.
Right. That's right. Very valid.
All right, well, I guess we don't have any public comments today, so we're at the point where we will consider our first executive session.
Yes, and just give us a minute to change things around.
Yes, and so Are we anticipating any actions to be taken after coming out of either of the executive sessions? No, okay,
No.
so they're really mostly just, discussions with legal counsel and. So that's for the folks participating, we're not expecting any actions, as a result of the executive sessions today, so.
So what will happen next is we will pause this meeting. And Belle and George, you have links to go to the executive session. And give us a minute to do that transition.
Let's vote on the motion first.
Okay.
To go into executive
Yeah.
session, so if somebody would be interested or willing to provide that motion, read the language.
Yeah, I'll make the motion of the meeting in executive session pursuant to one MRS section 405(6)(e) to consult with Municipal WasteHub Legal Counsel regarding contractual rights and duties and regarding the board's rights and duties under the bylaws.
We'll just do, we're gonna have two separate ones.
I've covered it in one motion.
So,
Yeah, that's fine.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second, and now that Belle's here, I think we'll do a roll call vote. So, Bob,
Yes.
Becky,
Yes.
Paulus, Melissa,
Yes.
Tony, Belle,
Yes,
and I'm a yes. So we're unanimous. We'll enter into executive session and resume the regular meeting when we're done with that first executive session.
Recording in progress.
there we go.
Hi, we're back after our first executive session, and as expected, we have no actions as a result of that executive session, but we do have one more executive session on the agenda before we'll adjourn. And again, we are not expecting any action after this executive session either, but I will entertain a motion. Somebody has that motion for me?
To convene an executive session for one MRS section 405(6)(e) to consult with the Municipal WasteHub Legal Counsel regarding the board's rights and duties under the bylaws.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? All right, moving into executive session number 2. All right, we have wrapped up executive session number 2, and we are ready to adjourn the meeting without any more actions taken. I would entertain a motion.
Okay.
Motion and a second, we are out. Thank you very much for everybody for their participation today. Thank you, board members, for your attendance today and input on all the matters.
Make sure before we close that, see if you can get who asked that question so I can email them, okay?
Thanks.
It was Brian Dupree.
Thanks for the long meeting, but no thanks.
And they're usually not.
Yeah.
I have to be
Not anymore.
flagged and not see my son. You think so highly of Tom. I think you should be sending him a hat right now.
On business transfer station.
I'm just saying.
Yes.